All right, so you should have already watched the first part of this video as to what are focus notes. Um, but in case you haven't, please go ahead and go back to our Google Classroom or Blackboard site to watch what are focus notes and why do we take them. What we are going to start looking at now is a time to practice taking focus notes, specifically that bottom I can or language objective. I can explain what each role in the building is for by taking focus notes using a teacher model and images. So I have titled this Adults in a Middle School, and other than sounding like a weird Dr. Seuss book, Mouse in the House, we are actually going to look at some of the different adults that you might find in the building. We're going to practice taking that focus notes, and we're going to have this resource that you are going to be able to walk away with so you know exactly who everyone is and who you might interact with on a daily basis in middle school. So if you haven't already done so, now is the time to set up your notes. I have the example here. Let me get my lightsaber ready. So I have the paper example that you saw in the last video, talking about 2 fingers over and 5 lines up for your summary. And then I have my actual example, which I'm taking notes along with you. So as I talk about something, at the end of every little section, I'll take a picture of my notes and show you what they look like. So as you can see, I have my red line here, kind of faint to see. I did 2 fingers and then drew my line up and down. And then I actually counted about 6 lines up. So again, you know your handwriting the best. You know where you feel the best. So anywhere from probably 5 to 7 lines up is a good spot for you. So future Mrs. Beetle here, we're going to actually go ahead and turn this into a little bit different. I am going to draw on mine as well, but what we're actually going to do is we're going to make a 3-column chart, just like that. I know mine aren't quite even. It's okay if the first one's a little smaller and the last one's a little smaller, but we want that middle one to be the biggest. And then why don't we save about probably 6 lines here at this bottom part. There we go. All right, so this should help us out as we are taking notes. All right, so we are actually going to talk about 9 different people. We're going to talk about the principal, which I'll write here. And go ahead and write along with me. Please know that I am writing on my iPad and my handwriting is not the best. We're going to talk about the vice principal. We're going to talk about the dean of students. We're going to talk about the principal secretary. And I'm going to abbreviate secretary. Okay. If you know what it means, you can abbreviate too. If you don't, go ahead and write it on out. And then we have the vice principal's secretary. All right, so there's half of them. Then we have our nurse. We have the school counselor. We have the social worker. And let me fix my S's. The psychologist. Now, obviously, there are way more people in the building that we could put on this list, like interventionists and special education teachers and the speech pathologist. But we're going to stick with these first few because they apply to every single person in our building. All right, so first and foremost, we have the principal. Okay. What do you think the principal does? Do you have an answer? So you've been in school for at least 5 years. You probably have interacted with a principal before. The principal's job is they are the head of the school. Head of the school. So that means that they're kind of technically in charge of every single person in the building. That includes like teachers, other adults in the building, students, all of it. They are the top person. Next up is the vice principal. Can you think back to elementary school? And if you had a vice principal, do you know what they did? So the vice principal is the second in charge. Second in charge. Okay. They have a lot of the same roles as the principal in terms of making some decisions for the building, but they also work with students and student issues. So one thing I think of is if you ever get a referral for the office, be that a good referral or a bad referral, you might be meeting with the vice principal. Next is the dean of students. So this one might be new to you. A dean of students is very similar to the vice principal. They're actually almost always focused on student issues. So their biggest job is to help students with the issues that they have in terms of behavior, in terms of positive rewards, in terms of awesome academic things. Dean of students is really kind of that go-to person for the students. Next up is the principal's secretary. Now this one is kind of exactly what it sounds like. It is the secretary for the principal. That means that they're scheduling meetings for the principal. A lot of times the principal secretary and the vice principal secretary do some similar things. Usually they're in charge of things like attendance. Okay? In the case of Horning, the vice principal secretary is in charge of attendance. So you might see these people in the office. They might be right next to each other, but usually one of these takes attendance for the district. So if you ever come in late, they are your people to talk to about making sure that you're marked present. Okay? They also deal with student accounts like money, so your lunch account. Student, and I'm not going to write money out. I'm going to use the dollar sign. Oops. So if you ever have to put money in your lunch account and you have to drop it off in person, that is going to be one of those two secretaries that you see kind of in the same area as the principal, vice principal, and dean of students. So who's next on the list? That is our school nurse. Now, I have a feeling you guys know what the school nurse does. So I'm going to give 30 seconds right here. Go ahead and you write in what you think the school nurse does. All right, did you get yours down? I went ahead and wrote mine in. So the nurse provides medicine and first aid. So we don't necessarily think of them like when you go to the doctor's office. They don't have all of those responsibilities. But the school nurse is able to give you medicine if you have medicine that you take daily or weekly or monthly, or if you have an inhaler or an EpiPen. They're in charge of all of that. And then they're able to do things like see if you're sick. They're able to help with scrapes and bruises and cuts. They are there for that. Usually they're found somewhere near the office of the principal and the vice principal, as well as the school counselors. So speaking of school counselors, they are up next. Our school counselors are there to help you with any sorts of problems that might come up between student to student, or if you're having a rough day and need to talk to them. They're also able to help you with potentially rearranging schedules, or if you have problems with classes, if you want to get into advanced classes for next year or in the future as you move off to high school. They're also fantastic for helping you plan out what you might want to do. Your school counselors do a lot of amazing things. So we're going to try and summarize it as best as we can. So they help with schedules. They provide emotional/mental help. So they help with your schedule if you need something changed with that, and they provide emotional and mental help, be that in the form of being able to talk to them giving you good strategies to help you deal with different changes or different things in your life. They really do a lot of awesome things for us. So these last two are a little different. You might not have had someone in your school that does these before, so I'm actually going to show you 2 quick videos of what a school social worker does and what a school psychologist does before we write. So I'm going to scroll down and let's watch these videos together. All right, so we're going to start by watching this quick little video as to what is a school social worker.
Hi, and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be about school social work. School social workers are uniquely trained to address the social and psychological issues that can block or hinder a student's academic progress. We do this by identifying and addressing very complex issues, meeting the needs of the child as a whole. Many school children and teens are faced with significant obstacles to learning, such as bullying, child abuse, substance abuse, gang violence, teen pregnancy, domestic violence, suicide, and or other personal crises. On top of all of those social and emotional issues, you're dealing with the school issues as well, which are going to be failing grades, truancy, lack of motivation in school. We work alongside principals, teachers, counselors, and community members. Many times we get confused for school counselors. The areas that school social workers and school counselors deal with can definitely be similar, but in general, a counselor is much more focused on schedules, grades, and ways to help a student succeed in their schoolwork, while social workers are going to focus on behavioral, mental health, and the home life of a student. What sets us apart greatly from other school staff is our ability to make home visits. And part of being a school social worker is reaching out to families that we can't reach in general by phone or emails or correspondence, letters, things like that. If we can't open those lines of communication, let's say that, then the social worker is sent out to go to the home. Place of employment is also a big difference between.
So let's talk about what this means and what the differences are. So we've already said that school counselors help with schedules and provide emotional and mental help. Based on our video, we could make this more specific and say in school. Oh no, I'm going to go over to my next part. There we go. Whereas a social worker helps with all those problems of emotional and mental health, but they also help bridge the gap between the school and the home. So I'm going to write bridge gap between school and home. So they help with all those same problems. So help with problems a student might have. All right, I'm going to move my psychologist down just a little bit. There we go. Now I have some extra space. The last one we're going to watch is a little short clip about what a school psychologist does and what they do. All right. Oh no, where did it go? There it is. So hi there, do you know what a school psychologist does? We are school-based professionals who provide support in mental health, learning, and behavior to help kids, too fast, to help kids in grades pre-K through K-12 succeed in school. Notice I am going to stop this as we go just to make sure that you have a chance to read it all. If it's too fast for me to read, it's probably a little too fast for you to read. Unless you're a rapid reader, in which case, go you. Our focus is to advocate and support for the well-being of young children and youth. Academically, behaviorally, and socio-emotionally. So what do they actually do? They do assessments, they collaborate and consult with other people and other professionals, they have crisis intervention, they have counseling, and they have academic and behavioral interventions. So they basically start to gather a bunch of different information, like, there we go, school records. So all of the records from elementary to middle school, interventions for students, parents, and teachers, and observations. With that, they use different procedures to look at students' academic, cognitive, and behavioral functioning. So the way you think and the way you think about thinking. So this information helps them provide supports, services, and resources to students in schools and outside of the school setting. They also consult and collaborate with school staff, people like your principals, your teachers, your school counselors, your school psychologists, or school social workers, and school counselors. They also develop interventions to help children succeed in school and collect the data to monitor student progress. And also make a difference in the lives of the students that they work for. So that one was kind of fast and a little different than what we might be used to. So a school psychologist, their job is to help collect data and provide interventions for students. Plural, students. So this could look like a couple different things. This could look like interventions. Let's say you're struggling in math. This could look like you going to a special math class in addition to your regular math class. This could also look like an intervention that might just help you transition if you're having a problem in another area of your life, not just academically. All right, so that was kind of a lot. I'm going to go ahead and slide over one page, and I'm going to show you a picture of my notes and what they look like now. We're actually not going to do the name part today. That's part of what we're going to do tomorrow. That's part of that reviewing our notes and making sure we understand them. So go ahead and you can check the next. It'll switch here in a second. Check the next, and if you want to pause to make sure you got everything, if I was going too fast, just go ahead and pause the video in a second to see my notes. All right, so here are my notes. In case I went too fast, feel free to stop here. The last part of what we're doing today with our focus notes is adding some questions and connections to the side. So I left plenty of space in that sidebar. I'll get my lightsaber back out so you can see where I'm actually talking. Look next to that arrow. Okay. There's all this space over here. This is for your questions and connections. So if you have a question right now about but what is the difference between a psychologist and a school social worker? Okay. If you have that question, you can go ahead and jot it down in the side here. Also, you can make connections. So if you are someone who remembers your principal from elementary school, you can say, my principal in elementary was blank, right next to the principal tab. Your goal is going to be to add, let me get my star box. Your goal is going to be to add 5 either questions or connections to this side here. So again, an example might be, my principal in elementary school was, so a previous person that you've had, or if you've worked with someone before, writing down who you might have worked with. Questions you can ask have to do with the differences or the similarities. It could also be where they're located and any other questions that you might have. Your goal is going to be 5. I know I'm challenging you here. 5 different questions or connections in the side here. All right? I have no doubt that you can do it. All right, so last thing, when you finish taking your notes, go ahead and take a picture of it and upload it as your work to Google Classroom. So you can do this via your iPad and then just quick upload like that. If you have any questions, let me know, but I'm excited to see your notes.